Okay, this is part 3 with Elyssa East, author of Dogtown, Death and Enchantment in a New England Ghost Town. And we're going to talk in this third piece about publishing in 2010. And what I wanted to talk to you about was, in this day and age, there's so many people, like we spoke in the first piece, there's so many authors.
Right.
And there's so many people that have good stuff. How does it, you're published by Simon & Schuster. How do you feel that the landscape has changed with the invention of Kindle and the invention of the Nook and all these e-readers and the different ways of distributing books? Does that make it more difficult for a publishing company to get behind one book and push it? Do you think that they have to dilute themselves a little bit more? How do you perceive the traditional publishing big house like Simon & Schuster?
Okay, well, publishing started to shift. I think really in something like the 90s where publishers started to follow what I call the spaghetti model, which is that you throw it to the wall and see if it sticks. So, basically what started to happen is that publishers would take on 20 titles. A single editor at a publishing house would be required to sign 20 titles in a year. So it was about meeting a quota and just seeing what would gain traction and what would stick, like that spaghetti on the wall. And so it's a tricky thing because books are, so many books are completely different. So you go into a bookstore and you look at the novels, and you can tell that, well, this book is going to appeal to one type of reader, and the book next to it is going to appeal to a completely different type of reader. So one of the challenges for publishers is figuring out their audience. And it's actually something that's very hard for them to identify. They don't do the kind of market research that other, producers of products do. And part of it is just because books are kind of they're more organic. It's harder to quantify them that way. So this has been going on for a while, and then we get into the age of digital distribution. One of the great things about that is that it means that books can be distributed in a much wider swath. There are certain places in America where you have to drive miles to get to a bookstore, or you got to order it online, but you can just zap it to your Kindle or your device and get it instantly. There are also other options with a digital book where you can hyperlink to a website and to research and things like that, which is really nice. But you do lose that personal touch of going into your local bookstore and just asking them, what's good? What do you think I should be reading? And that's a piece that I think that is where readers and authors and booksellers and of course the industry is really going to be challenged, and is actually challenged right now, because there's something to be said for going and hearing an author speak and meeting that individual in person, actually having them sign your book. This woman, Sally Tisdale, who was a judge for the National Book Awards, recently wrote this piece in the Oregonian about how her mail carrier would show up every day with boxes and boxes of books, and how she kind of got to know this woman really well, and how the books just filled up so much space in her room. And she said, books are like people. It's like they fill up space like a person does. They're full of ideas and they have a presence. And once you get into a digital platform, you lose that sense of presence. I think she's right about that, but I also think there are a lot of opportunities. So it's this really tricky time to figure that out.
Wow.
And then I have people who say, hey, I downloaded your book to my Kindle, and I'm like, hey, you want me to sign your Kindle for you? What are you going to do? So, and I think that once you've got the book on your Kindle, you're less inclined to go to the bookstore and make that personal connection.
I think places like the Bookstore of Gloucester and Dogtown Bookstore, Toad Hall Bookstore, and these places, Newport. These people that run these bookstores are in love with books.
They absolutely are.
And they know their customers.
Right.
And I know there's a lot of people that go to these places, and Janice Severance will say, I got the book for you.
Right. Right.
You know, and you don't get that on an e-reader.
You don't, and you also don't get it on Amazon. I mean, Amazon will say, if you bought this book, you might like these books. Those spots are actually paid for.
Yeah,
so, you know, it's just...
It's gross.
Yeah, how do you know that you would actually like those books?
Right,
you know? So, and the other nice thing about the bookstore is the store owners, they really know books, and so they're not really going to steer you wrong. So, and for authors such as me who did not get advertising dollars, you know, Simon & Schuster did not push my book. I'm pushing my book.
Yeah, I see. I'm reading it, following you on Twitter.
Yeah.
So anybody knows, they can follow you on Twitter. It's ELYSSAEAST on
That's
Twitter.
right.
And I'm fascinated by your schedule. I can't even believe you do what you do.
I know.
I'm following you all the time.
I can't believe it either.
Right? So when is the movie coming up? This book, these names, this setting screams for a movie. I mean, it's ridiculous if it doesn't get made into a movie. Have you been contacted as far as that?
No, I mean, I met someone who kind of traffics in this sort of thing, and but I didn't ever hear anything from him. I think there are a couple of challenges. I mean, some of the challenges that publishing is facing right now are not unlike what's the film industry is facing. And it's a matter of just getting the book into the hands of the right person.
Yeah.
Someone like Ben Affleck, who has a feel for Massachusetts and has a feel for, you know, the real local, you know, thing. Though people will claim that, you know, the town is really, you know, he messed that one up. But so far that hasn't happened. I mean, of course, when a book goes into the hands of movie people, I mean, I could see them.
Geez, I would think, like, in this day and age, with what's very popular right now, like, you know, this, like, you know, this, what is it, Twilight, that whole series, and this very mystical, and these names, and it's real, and this story, and the way you tell it between, you know, goes. You want to talk a little bit about how it's not just a straightforward history lesson on Dogtown. It goes back and forth between the murder and everything. You want to just quickly hit on
sure.
that?
I mean, when I set out to write the book, you know, I'm a kind of an impatient reader myself, and I just was like, you know, I want to just drop right into this thing. And with the history chapters, I wrote each chapter as if it were a short story, so I really wanted to tell the story and to bring that story to life. And the same thing with the murder, which was just really, really, really hard to write. I mean, I spent a lot of time just bawling my eyes out. It was just horrible to contemplate. But I had to really, you know, try to tap into what was there, why was this happening, and in that moment, when that event took place in 1984, people didn't know what was going to happen. They didn't know how it was going to be resolved, and I had to really kind of try to go to that place and keep that sense of suspense that people lived with alive, and just the overwhelming fear that people had. Certainly, everyone I met so many people mentioned this murder to me, and they really. And I was sort of surprised because I was like, this happened 20-something years ago, and you're still talking, like you have a need to talk about it. It's because, you know, violent tragedy really affects communities for decades to come. I really learned that, and I learned it from people who didn't know the victim and who didn't know the family but knew of them. But it really just hit me in the gut that there was something still kind of in the balance for people, and I really wanted to bring that to the book, and that sense of the unknown, which I think really drives, you know, your sense of suspense in a story, and I just didn't want to lose that. So.
All right, well, Elyssa, thank you so much.
Thank you, Joe.
Why don't we tell
the
local people where they can buy your book? Why don't you go ahead with that?
Yeah, so it's you can buy it at the bookstore on Main Street. You can also buy it at Toad Hall, and let's see, Manchester by the Book has it. We're doing an event there on November 5th, and I'm hoping to have some sea shanty singers there.
Very nice.
We're going to be tasting some Ryan and Wood Folly Cove rum.
You saw Bobby Ryan yesterday.
Yeah.
I followed that.
So, you know, it's basically all the local bookstores you can get it. You can get it online as well, but I think it's great to support the local businesses.
Okay. And they can also check out the website,
That's right.
Dogtown the Book.
That's right.
Right.
Dogtownthebook.com.
.com.
And then there's a Facebook page for the book, which is also just Facebook/Dogtown the Book. And then Then there's the Twitter experience.
The Twitter?
Yeah, people want to go there.
There you go. Elyssa East, thank you so much.
Thank you, Joey.